Hey everyone, wanted to show you a task that you might be asked to complete here pretty soon, and that is setting up caseloads for your special ed teachers so that they can view their students in the My Activities area in Skyward. And the place that you're going to go do that is in Activities, and you're going to set one up. There may already be some caseloads set up for you, and so if that's the case, you can just make sure that the teachers are set up correctly and that the students are added to those. If not, you may have to add in some new caseloads, so we're going to cover that right now. Where you find that is in Office and then Activities. So you can see in Amberley here, this is an elementary example. I do have some caseloads set up in there. If you're in a middle school or high school, you will see a very different list because it's going to include all sports, choir, drama, musical, all of that kind of thing. So that's activities kind of have many uses in Skyward. We're going to talk about using them as a special ed caseload for your special ed teachers. So if there's a caseload already there, it's pretty easy. You can just edit the one that's there, add the kids, make sure the teacher's set up. I'll go over that in a minute, but I'm going to go over adding one from scratch here right at the beginning, and we'll go through that. So in order to add a brand new activity, you just click Add. You have to give it a little code. I like to do the first initial of the last name, so I'm going to make one called Miller Caseload. So MCL works for me. Whatever works for you and your building is fine. It doesn't really control anything. It just asks for a code. This type here is really not that big of a deal. I usually just set it to the default here. There is an extracurricular type over on the right hand side that you have to select. I'll talk about that in a minute. So for this, there's really no reason to change it. The dates up here default to the school year. I usually just leave that exactly the way it is. There's really no reason to change those dates. If you really wanted to be specific about it, I guess you could, but I think you're just doing more harm than good when you're changing those dates. The extracurricular type for this kind of thing, because we're going to use it for academic purposes, as well as just connection with the students, that kind of thing, I'm going to select academic here. If it was an athletic, it was a sports team, you can do that, and you can see you have just a few types in there. So academic for these. This really doesn't control much. I usually just kind of go through and check the boxes as appropriate. The big one that you want to check is used for grading. This will allow the special ed teacher to do grade type monitoring. So they can look for missing assignments, they can look at any of their grade books, what they're earning in any of the classes that the students enrolled in. So that's really helpful for the middle school and high school level. And, in addition to specials courses and any other individual courses at the elementary level. So you want used for grading on. I usually don't do the participation start and end dates. I leave that alone. I do usually recommend hiding these specific activities from family access, only because it's a caseload. It's more of just a way for the special ed teacher to monitor just his or her specific groups of kids. From here you can save and close, but I'm going to go ahead and save and add the staff member so that I can get that done kind of on the next screen here. So what you do, I just clicked the save and add the staff member, so I'm going to add activity staff, click that. If you don't see the person on the list already, you can expand your numbers and scroll to the list, or you can just go over to the right hand side, type in the last name. There I am, so go ahead and click select. Don't worry too much about this, about whether they're active or inactive. So there I am. Now, before you click finish, you want to click the button that says change leader status. That makes this teacher, this staff member, whoever you just selected, as the designated leader of the activity. If you don't do that, the reason it exists is because you could add, of course, multiple staff members to one activity that might be monitoring this. So remember, this is designed with sports and other activities in mind. So you could have 4 or 5 track coaches, one head coach. The head coach would get the leader status. So typically for special ed caseloads, you're going to see one staff member in here. You're going to click the change leader status button. You're going to click finish. So now you got the caseload. The activity is set up and ready to go. To add the students, you want to expand the information on the left. Go down to the student roster and just simply click Add Student. You notice there was an Add Students by Class button. So if you do already have these kids scheduled into a class, which you may or may not, you could go and search that class and just grab that whole roster. If these are special ed students, more than likely it's going to be, that button's not going to be everything that you need, and you might want to just go through the list. But sometimes that little button is helpful. So in here I just simply pick whichever kids are on the list. If you don't see them on the list, again, you can scroll. You can look up names here down on the bottom. Once you've checked all the boxes of the names, you can simply click Save, and you're done. As long as you got all the kids, that is the caseload, and that's how it works. When the teacher logs in, they have several options. They can do post daily attendance. They can click on My Gradebook. One of the options that teachers have is an option called My Activities. They can click on that, and the great thing for special ed teachers is that it's one place to monitor all their kids all at once, whereas a lot of times they get added as alternate teachers to multiple gradebooks, especially the middle school and high school. So if you can imagine, it's a little harder to manage for the special ed teacher to dig into all of those different gradebooks and be sifting through, all of the gen ed kids to look for her handful or his handful of special ed students. So that's it. That's setting up a caseload in activities in Skyward. So you can see here, if you already had a caseload, for example, and you needed to add students just to that list, it's as simple as expanding the information, clicking Adding Students. The only thing I would mention is if you do have a caseload sitting there already, go over to the right, click Edit, and just make sure that the staff is added. So in this case, Buckley's caseload, she has not been added as the staff member. And you can see that we're in school year 1920. The start and end date are 15-16. So this was created back then for that. I also see the Use for Grading checkbox is missing. So I'm going to let Joanna Amberly take care of that one. But that is a couple of tips that you want to do. If the caseload is already there, you want to click Edit, make sure that the leader is set up the right way, and then go ahead and add the students. Hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.